Welcome to Crossroads. I'm your host, Joshua Phillip. Today we have Vernon Robinson. He's the founder of Black Americans to Re-elect the President. So Vernon, great to have you here.
Well, I'm great being here, and the Epoch Times did a great job on the Spygate expose.
The Black American movement to re-elect President Donald Trump. And this is an interesting movement. You were mentioning that the GOP does not have a very good standing with Black Americans.
Well,
right?
Sometime in after the Goldwater blowout, Republican political consultants from then on convinced the party, its allies like Guns and Life and Republican candidates not to communicate with black voters. The theory went that if you communicate with black voters, it'll just upset them and they will turn out in higher numbers and vote against you, which nobody's ever made a sale without asking for the order. So that is an idiotic position, but it's essentially been the position of the party for 60 years. So the Democrats didn't have to debate issues. All they have to do is put out terrorist ads like vote Democratic because Republicans want to kill your mom and your dog. I was telling you my favorite one was vote Democratic or another black church will be bombed.
And that was a real ad.
That was a real ad run by the Missouri Democratic Party in 2000, and they were conflating white Democrat terrorists like Dynamite Bob Chambliss, who actually were blowing up black churches in the 60s, with Republican federal candidates. So and got away with it too, because the GOP, may have mentioned a dissent in the Wall Street Journal, but never got around to running radio to talk about real issues like school choice, which life, school choice, the Second Amendment, defending black families with the Second Amendment, securing the borders, and the huge increase in jobs and wealth and everybody's 401ks and 403bs, which are important to the average citizen, including black ones.
So what do you tell people when it comes to, I think there is a stigma. They think the Republicans are the racist party and all this stuff. What do you tell people when they ask you about this?
Well, we have the Make Black America Great Again booklet, which first of all, poo-poos the idea that after 69 years of being on the planet, Donald Trump suddenly in the last 2 years became a racist, and point out that the usual suspects, Sharpton, Jackson, the NAACP, the Urban League, feted Donald Trump, gave him awards, including the same award on the same day as Rosa Parks. So the only thing he did wrong in the eyes of the left is he ran against Hillary Clinton and beat her. So, and that's when they started calling him a racist. We also exposed the Democratic parties, not stuff they did 170 years ago, which was heinous, running slavery, running segregation, running Jim Crow laws.
It's true. People are starting to understand now that they were the party of Jim Crow, they were the party of slavery.
And most importantly, they were party of the paramilitary terrorist organization known as the Ku Klux Klan.
Right. Which platformed on taking people's gun rights away, right?
Yes.
That was one of their initial platforms.
And unfortunately in North Carolina, the last Jim Crow law still on the books is the pistol permit from the sheriff that was created to deny black citizens the ability to buy a pistol and defend their families. So, the GOP might eventually get around to repealing that, except they're too busy expanding Medicaid in North Carolina. But in any event.
So you're saying that you're not just going by these old Democrat laws, so the Democrats being the party of Jim Crow, the KKK, and slavery, but also the new ones. So what are the new ones?
Well, the reason being is that, I was an elected official for 8 years, and voters couldn't remember what you did for them last year, or last month, much less what happened 170 years ago or 74 years ago. I mean, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments of the Constitution were passed by Republican votes. All the civil rights legislation in the 60s would not have been passed except with Republican votes, because the Dixiecrat Democrats were all opposed. So, and we, sometimes you have to address historical fallacies. The Democrats, they say, well, all the racists became Republicans. Not a single person except for Strom Thurmond changed their party affiliation of all the Democrats who voted against civil rights legislation in the 60s.
So there was never a big switch, is what you're saying.
There was never a big switch, at least as far as the folks who actually voted against black civil rights as Democrats in the Congress and the Senate. It was funny that the media, when addressing Joe Biden and the Kamala Harris shootout, said that Joe Biden reaching out to segregationist senator was an example of reaching across the aisle. Excuse me, they were all Democrats. He wasn't reaching across the aisle. He was reaching across to the segregationist Democrats in Tennessee and Georgia and Mississippi and Alabama and Florida and North Carolina and Virginia and West Virginia to try to stop the integration of the public schools in Delaware. But again, we digress. The real crime of the Democratic Party is they now stand today to kill black babies as late as possible so they can sell their body parts for a higher price. They stand in the schoolhouse door of educational opportunity, supporting the union instead of the parents and the kids. And that was most dramatic in Florida when the black Democrat communist candidate, Andrew Gillum, said, we are going to end all the school choice programs in Florida. And 100,000 black women whose children and grandchildren were in those programs say, no, you're not. And so they voted 20%, 100,000 votes for DeSantis. And that was 2.5 times bigger than his margin of victory, which is about 34 or 5. So that issue is a critical issue anywhere in the country, to the extent that the GOP has put those kind of programs on the books and black children and grandchildren start taking advantage of them. The Democrats have a serious problem. Well, they have a serious problem on the Second Amendment. If indeed this is a racist country, do you really want to be disarmed? No. Yes. Answer that question is. If it's not a racist country, do you want only the guys who are criminals to have the guns? No. You don't want that to happen either. So there are no pro-gun Democrats left. There are no pro-life Democrats left. There are no pro-school choice Democrats, except for maybe 3 left.
And it's important to note in the whole pro-choice thing, the whole thing was started by Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger was a racist. She was a eugenicist.
Yes, yeah. Who the Nazis embraced as a great role model.
Yeah. So literally, they're using this. Yeah.
Why the Klan was inviting her to speak to the rallies, and it wasn't about laundry tips on how to get whiter sheets. She was promoting the idea that undesirables like black folks should be exterminated. And given that 60% of black babies today in New York are aborted,
that's right. In other words, there are more being aborted than are being born.
That is correct.
Yeah.
60-40. 60% are killed in the womb. The most dangerous place for you to be a black baby is in your mother's womb in New York. And it's not that hot in a lot of other places too. I mean, it's a 50-50 proposition in North Carolina. So,
which is what Margaret Sanger wanted by her own quotes.
Indeed. And of course, Hillary and Barack think that Margaret Sanger is a great American, and that's not the case. So we talk about those issues. The Make Black America Great Again booklet is important, but not as important as buying urban contemporary radio in the swing states in the 2020 election, which is our plan to buy, just in case you have a millionaire next door who's watching the program. And we would like the viewers to check out blackamericans.maga.org should they be interested in these ads.
So in other words, you're calling for the re-election of Trump because you stand against racism, because you stand against the abuses of the black Americans. Is that accurate?
Yes, the president's done a great job. I don't know if you've checked your 401k lately, but you are wealthier than you used to be. Clearly, black voters know that, like 41% or 48% of black voters, when asked, will you have more money in your pocket at the end of the Trump administration versus the end of the Obama administration, they said Trump. So those are great numbers. Sometime last year, Rasmussen polled, it's around 36% now, but it hit 41 approval of the president. Now, that is not voter intention, but it's a great basis if the GOP asks for the order. Well, that's a big problem. The Republican Party is still not doing it. In Missouri, 3 super PACs, including mine, carried the entire water to ask black voters to vote for Josh Hawley against Claire McCaskill. We helped kill off Claire McCaskill. We're very proud of that. We also, my radio ads took out Kay Hagan in the North Carolina Senate race, where, according to Rasmussen Reports polling, we moved 11% of the black vote in 8 weeks with radio ads over that period of time. So we want to get back on with $2 million in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Iowa, and Arizona, running those same kind of hard-hitting, high-contrast ads. Because what happens is that the black voter percentage for Republicans goes up and the black turnout goes down. Probably because for the first time voters have heard that the Democrat Party doesn't want to save black babies. They want to kill them as late as possible to sell their body parts. When folks hear that, they're not quite ready to vote for the Republican, but they won't vote for the Democrat, and in many cases don't vote at all.
So do you think the main issue is this whole idea that they've been fed by most of the left, that the conservatives are the racists and all this stuff? Is that the main line, you think, that people are still kind of don't understand?
The Democrats get to say anything they want in the presence of a vacuum, with the GOP not saying anything. Newsflash: a blue-collar black worker in Kansas City does not read the Wall Street Journal. So if the only communication you're going to make is in the Wall Street Journal and the Economist, then you're not going to get the message across. When we ran ads in Kansas City and St. Louis, we reached half of the black electorate each week for 4 weeks in that campaign, and the other super PAC did it for 5 weeks. But the point being is half. Half is a big number. 25% a day, half a week. The GOP, to the extent it did anything, which it doesn't usually do, Reince Priebus hired $10 million worth of black outreach people, and they didn't give them a budget. I guess they were supposed to go to NAA speed dinners and said, "Pharaoh, let my people go." Well, in that retail type of sense, we endorse people trying to do retail, but you cannot meet half of the electorate, the black electorate, in retail. By the time those operatives of Reince Priebus met half of the black electorate, we'd be in the 24th century. James Tiberius Kirk would be driving starships. So that's why we call it the Star Trek solution. Again, we can reach half of the black electorate with hard-hitting, high-contrast ads on the issues we talked about each week, right now, today. At the end of the week, in places that have urban contemporary radio, we can reach half of the black electorate.
Great. So I guess last 2 minutes, what is the message you hope people get? What is, I think, the main point you hope people take home from the message you're trying to get out there?
This is not your mama's Democratic Party. That the Democratic Party today is a radical communist party that supports Planned Parenthood killing babies, black babies in particular. That it supports the teachers union and not the parents and the children, while the GOP and the president support school choice. That the Democrats don't know how to create a private sector job. In fact, most of them never had a private sector job. The president and Republicans know how and have created a huge space. Every time that you go into a store and it has a help wanted ad, that is the success of the Republican and the president's approach to the economy, that not only has created jobs and wealth, but your personal retirement account is up. And we want every black person in America to have a $250,000 or $500,000 in their retirement account, because then they will understand that when the Democrats talk about taxing the rich, they're talking about them. They're talking about lowering their capital gains. They're talking about lowering their dividends and making them have less money to pass on to their
Kids,
progeny. On the school choice, on the secure the borders, where did all the black tellers go? The banks have decided to do business with the illegals, and to do that, particularly since the current wave of Mexican immigrants are less literate than anybody else has ever been in this country, they have to hire Spanish speakers. Guess what? The entry level for black folks into the banking industry was tellers. Where did all the black tellers go? Did they all become vice presidents? No, they're being replaced by Spanish speakers. The open borders policies of the Democrat are a dagger at the throat of the black middle class, at the black contractors, at black bricklayers, at black drywall installers, all the trades, and even some professions. School teaching, you now have to speak Spanish to get a job in the Dallas public school system. What is that going to do to the black middle class? It will decimate it. On the issue of the Second Amendment, trust me, you want to be able to shoot back, particularly in the zoos that are run by Democrats like Chicago and St. Louis and the District of Columbia. You really need to be able to shoot back Charlotte. And finally, the Democrats say they support criminal justice reform, but the president actually did it. Folks talked about it for 25 years, and he delivered, as he has delivered on so many things. And essentially that is, if you want to go back to the bad old days, then that's your choice. But I believe 20% of the black vote is willing to do that, and that's all you need. 20% in the industrial Midwest and 15% of the South, and the Democratic Party is reduced to New Venezuela along the East Coast to like Northern Virginia, and Ecotopia down 50 miles inland from Seattle to San Diego, and Hawaii. And that is it, with a couple of cities, Denver, Chicago, Philadelphia, the 5 boroughs of Manhattan, but that's it. Maybe South Texas, Broward County in Florida. But they cannot be competitive any longer. The reason why they want to open the borders, the reason why they want to make black people expendable is because they need the illegals to come in and do something that Americans will no longer do, which is vote for Democrats.
Great. Thank you for being on the show. We'll get you on again sometime.
That's blackamericans.org.
Great. Thank you. Everyone, please remember to like and subscribe. See you next time.